What's up, everybody? Welcome in to yet another lesson. It's Compound Forums, and I am Coach Johan Francis from CoachJohanCSCS.com. This is lesson 3. I thank you guys for listening. This one is about global stretch shortening cycles, the power stroke. So it's the idea of plyometrics being applied at a greater, more global focus. So plyometrics isn't just one thing. It can be applied to so many things, so many exercises, so many powerful movements. A forehand in tennis, a golf swing, a baseball stroke, right? A punch and a kick in Muay Thai. Okay, so developing power, you guys, in exercise can involve breaking down each phase and working them independently. So you can work eccentric contractions, you can work deceleration, and that's kind of what we're going to emphasize when we stretch shorten. If you remember the last lesson, we talked about the 3 phases of plyometric work: eccentric, amortization, that transfer, and concentric. We highlighted it inside the video. Well, all of that has to do with the concept of stretch shortening. Stretch shortening cycles are the rotation of a muscle about, or a group of muscles about their joint angles, where one side of that muscle in the related joint angle is stretching. The other side is shortening or contracting. That action about that joint angle, about that bone, skeletal bone, adds to an overall increase summation of tension that will then express itself in a burst of strength instantaneously or momentarily. Okay, to make a long story short, it's called power, and this is how we express it. I gave you the analogy, and maybe you've thought of it yourself, of a bow and arrow. Okay, it's stretched. One side is stretching. That I'm not an expert on the bow and arrow and the anatomy of a bow, but the top parts start to bend down towards each other. They shorten, and that allows for that arrow to go flying. That's the expression. Okay? But we also want to remember that deceleration in the human body is important, especially if we're going to chain a lot of plyometric movements together. If you're doing battle ropes, right, or if you're punching or kicking a lot, you land and then you pull back into that starting phase where you can then reset. If you do a vertical jump test, like I've done vertical jump tests, right before you land, you catch yourself and you slow your body down. Well, that is actually part of the power stroke and has to be factored in. Okay? If not, your kinetics will be shortchanged. Okay? You will shortchange your kinetics when you lack the preparation of the deceleration. But let's start with the stretching portion. Okay? It's moving the working muscles that you're going to use in the action. So it could be a wall ball, right? Repeated wall ball or ball slams, where you're stretching the chest. You're stretching the chest and triceps to slam a ball in front of you against the wall. Once they're stretched, you turn it over, and that's the beginning of the contraction. It's the idea of chaining many moves together quickly, right? Where we're stretching some of our body and our muscle groups. We want to make sure that everything is aligned, because that alignment is actually going to provide kinetic adherence, right? Directional expression, be it rotational to the side or to the front, wherever we're aiming. All of that is going to be unloaded if we stretch properly. We don't, in other words, want the head to be looking forward when we're rotating our body to the left in a wall ball movement, right? Or if we're punching and kicking a heavy bag as hard as we can, we're not looking behind us. That breaks the kinetics. As a result, we cannot preload properly and counter rotation. So part of the concentric part of this, or the stretching part, is look at Colin's rear arm. He's gonna punch my pad right here. He's actually pulled forward with the non-punching arm. He is in the air, so that's actually happening too. He's pulling forward with the right arm. His left arm more aggressively, but at least equally, has been drawn back in preparation for the movement. We've caught this snapshot at the perfect amortization moment where he is actually going to transfer all of this front preloaded arm back so that this arm can come flying into my pad and give me forearm bruises. I'm kidding. Contraction. Okay, so contracting is the most violent portion of the power stroke. It's the explosive part. It's the sexy part. It's the loudest part. It's the, picture-worthy, Instagram-worthy part of the lift, right? When you see the college football team lifting weights, right? They're not lifting when you come to the floor on a 550-pound back squat. It's when you come up, they get rowdy. When the crew team is hitting the stroke, right? And they're mowing down the water, right? Creating all those beautiful waves with their oars. The sexy part is where you're jamming those oars into the water. That's the explosive part. That's the contraction part of every power stroke. But we forget that most of what happened was that stretch right before, right? The primary movers are stretched, okay? And the summation of that stretch causes our movement. So Debbie, already up in the air, right? Already extended her knees, but before that had to flex her hips, right? Had to flex her hamstrings, right? In order for her to flick this, I believe it was a 40-ish pound kettlebell up into the air. So this is actually the contraction part. Now, the deceleration is where we stop all of the action. So we did the big kettlebell swing and we got that bell up in the air. We want to stop it. So we're going to use a little bit of strength. We're going to use a little bit of energy in order to delay that turnover from concentric back into eccentric, or back into, I guess, eccentric for the next phase. You want to punch through your target if you're boxing. And you want to pull that fist back to the starting position. That is also a requirement of stretch shortening and is a requirement, an energy requirement. And so that has to be calculated for, okay? It reinforces the action of the next power stroke. And if it's botched, you often will not get a smooth turnover. So Danielle is doing archer swings with her kettlebells. Now, if she doesn't stop the action right here and she lets this kettlebell go flying up, and this one won't stop in the back, right? It will carry her, add rotational pull to her movement, and she'll have to then counter rotate. Her power stroke in this particular situation, which is going to be alternating arms, will completely be destroyed, and she'll have to start over the entire set, maybe, right? And she'll have to start from square one again. Her power doesn't get transferred. So as we take a look at one rep, a single rep of any power move, let's take a look at the time it takes. If it's, a tenth of a second or a fraction of a second, a 1/4 of a second, right? Like Muhammad Ali would talk about throwing 3 punches in a 3/4 of a second, right? Whatever that number is, most of it is spent stretching or counter rotating, right? Then a lot of it is spent snapping into place, nearly instantaneous, but this turnover, amortization, right, and reload oftentimes has to be very short, okay? It has to be very short. So the contraction phase includes amortization. That reload has to be short. I want you to think back to amortization though. It's included in the contraction phase, but it is almost immediate, because if it's not, we lose what we built up. It dissipates as heat. It's lost, and it doesn't add to the stress. So the longer we stay in a low portion in a jump squat, for example, right? The longer we hold the ball behind our head for wall slams, the less power we build up, the less plyometric force is used, because it's lost as heat. So in order for this to work, the muscles have to stay elastic, okay? And then you want to reload, and that's a very short period of time. Okay, you guys, we've moved along nicely. We have the final lesson, lesson 4, and I hope you guys catch me then and go onto the website, download your forms, join me on Facebook, and hey, I'll see you for the next lesson, lesson 4. Stay up.